2016 has already been, but will continue to be a great year for PC gaming. And GameRanks has the goods. Here's the top 25 PC exclusives of 2016. Number 25, Hamala is an open-world sci-fi survival horror game where you wake up from cryo-sleep in Eden. Now, Eden is often the name of utopian cities, and this is not an exception to that rule, but obviously something has gone wrong, otherwise this wouldn't be much of a game. The citizens of Eden have been infected with a disfiguring disease and can be hostile. In many ways it kind of seems like BioShock, but in other ways it seems like something completely different. They've talked about basing their artificial intelligence in the game on personality, and I'm really interested to see how that pans out. Number 24, World of Warcraft Legion, which is the latest expansion set to the MMORPG that everybody knows, World of Warcraft. The expansion not only brings new areas to Azeroth, including one called the Broken Isles, it also raises the level cap from 100 to 110, and introduces a new Demon Hunter hero class that begins at level 98. Initially, it will include 10 new dungeons and 2 new raids. Number 23, Kathy Rain, which actually has nothing to do with Heavy Rain, although it sounds like she could be a cousin or something, is actually a point-and-click adventure game that people have been raving about. Kathy Rain really looks like a 90s adventure game, albeit a little bit more detailed and perhaps slightly more modern in style, but it brings so much of what made adventure games in the 1990s great to a new generation. On top of that, the story's great, the voice acting is superb, and I'm just really stoked to see somebody make a game like this again. Number 22, Dreadnought is a space combat simulator that places you in a commander role of a larger spaceship, so kind of like an Armada-style game, albeit in space. The game promises to have some very tactical battles and a lot of customization, as well as some interesting and more in-depth features like power regulation, allowing you to sort of manage your ship in a way that's more like one might expect a commanding officer to. The game's currently in closed beta, and I've heard good things, and it seems like a very unique title. Number 21, Overfall is this incredibly interesting mix of a few different types of game that essentially comes out to be a turn-based tactical RPG combined with a visual novel. You can fight or befriend foes, you can ally with various different races, there's some supernatural stuff to deal with, and it all takes place in a procedurally generated world. I really enjoy the art style, it's kind of both new school and old school in one, and it does such a good job nailing so many different things that you might want out of a game, all in one very well put together package. Number 20, Black Desert Online is an extremely detailed MMORPG with an awesome battle system. Like, it's fully real time, you have to aim yourself, and it feels a lot more like what we've come to expect from modern gaming as opposed to what you see more on MMORPGs, because you know, a lot of them have been around quite a while. On top of that, it probably has some of the most detailed character customization of any game ever made, allowing you to change just about anything about your character, literally from pupil shape to anything about their body pretty much, and a lot of people are enjoying this game. Number 19, Battlefleet Gothic Armada is, well, one of many Warhammer 40,000 RTS games at this point, but brings perhaps some of the better space tactics that have ever been executed in a real-time strategy game into a package that brings you into basically every minute detail of what you might be doing in any of the game's 4 factions. The art style absolutely lives up to the name and is most certainly depicting a gothic version of space combat, which is not something you get to see that often, so is perhaps worth it just for that, and the fact that it's a really good RTS. Number 18, Descent Underground is something I've been following with great interest, on account I'm a huge fan of the original Descent. Descent Underground is actually being developed by some people that used to work on Star Citizen, who licensed the property from Interplay. If you have the chance to get on early access and get a copy of Descent Underground, even in its unfinished form, it's fantastic. Truly, Descent is possibly one of the more underrated of all of the first-person shooters on account it had such a different mechanic. And from the music, the sounds, and the feel of it, Descendant Studios has really nailed it. Number 17, Planet Coaster is the spiritual successor to 2004's Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. The game is planned as an expansion on all of the ideas in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, except in a much more advanced engine. Another interesting idea is that the player-created attractions will be able to be shared through a mechanic called Global Village. I'm assuming that's kind of like a massive connected theme park kind of, but it certainly sounds very interesting, and everything that I've seen of it looks very good. Number 16, Kingdom Come Deliverance is a game we've talked about a couple times, and although it's been delayed quite a bit, does sound quite interesting. Now, the idea of it is to be more historically accurate, at least in all the mechanics and clothing and armor, than the typical medieval fantasy RPG. RPG, and the developer Warhorse Studios has put out a lot of footage that makes it look pretty brutal. Something that emphasizes that is the clothing and armor system, which gradually gets more dirty or bloody as you continually wear it. This is one of those games I'm really hoping lives up to everything that's been promised about it because it sounds awesome. Number 15, Factorio is a game that kind of combines resource gathering and crafting with real-time strategy and survival. An astronaut is sent to an alien planet with the mission of setting up a base that has some sort of defense to allow Earth's spacecraft to arrive. Unfortunately, there's a crash landing, things don't go quite as anybody wanted it to, and the hostile alien fauna continually ramps up its defense of its natural habitat as you continue to build. It's a really interesting combination of several different ideas. The Steam Early Access version of it is great, and I can't wait for the final. Number 14, if you like Diablo, you'll probably like Grim Dawn, which had been in development for over 6 years. Everything that you could basically want out of a 40 to 50 hour action RPG, you get out of Grim Dawn. The aesthetic is a little bit reminiscent of Diablo, but I can't help but continually notice all these little stylistic things that just make it its own. I'm particularly a big fan of the spell effects in this game, and really just anything. It's a great game, seriously, try it out. Number 13, Hearts of Iron 4 is the newest and most advanced entry into the Hearts of Iron series. The game is going to feature both competitive and cooperative cross-platform multiplayer for up to 32 players, and promises to be the most detailed of the grand strategy games based on World War II that Paradox Interactive has been putting out for well over a decade. Number 12, Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord. Bannerlord is a prequel to the previous game Mount and Blade Warband and takes place during the decline of the Calradian Empire, and is meant as an analog of how the Roman Empire fell and the early European kingdoms formed. Now, what I think is so interesting about this game is that it's an action RPG where a lot of games with that type of a plot end up being real-time strategy. And I think that Mount and Blade Warband is a unique enough game that if you play it, you might get a good idea of what you're going to see here. I enjoyed it a lot, and I have a feeling that this is going to continue that tradition. Number 11, Divinity Original Sin is an RPG, and the sequel to the really well-loved 2014 title. Now, if you played the original, you probably know kind of what they're going for at very least, but if not, it's very much a turn-based classic RPG. It does include a lot more modern ideas like skill crafting, for instance, and a great addition to the classic RPG format, and it looks to ratchet up everything from the original title in a way that really builds on more of the emotional ideas. For instance, there's a system called Love and Hate, which allows you to establish romance, friendship, and hatred towards other characters. These types of ideas make Divinity Original Sin 2 sound like a really great sequel and very worthy of the original's name. Number 10, Lawbreakers is one of those hero-based arena FPS games that have been happening over and over and over since everybody realized that Team Fortress 2 existed. That being said, this actually looks like they do a lot of good stuff in, and sets up some pretty cool lore in their sci-fi world, with the game taking place after an event called The Shattering, which essentially creates an interesting version of our actual world that seems one part steampunk, one part cyberpunk, and one part I don't know. Now, currently this is a PC exclusive, but a lot of that seems to be that Cliff Bleszinski and company would need to partner with somebody in order to port it and manage it on consoles. Number 9 is Ashes of the Singularity, which is one of the more resource-intensive games to ever come out in the real-time strategy genre. The main draw to the game is there could be literally thousands of units on screen, as well as brings you some of the familiar elements from Stardock like Supreme Commander's economic system, at least a version of that. The game really gives you some sprawlingly huge RTS battles to play in, and does it phenomenally. Number 8, Torment Tides of Numenera is a role-playing game that serves as a spiritual successor to Planescape Torment. It does indeed look a lot like the isometric RPGs that we're starting to see a comeback, but it does throw some modern ideas in there. Most specifically, it throws out the alignment system and goes for a more Mass Effect-like system that they're calling the Tide system. Now, for me, this type of game coming back is really cool, and I also particularly like that they're trying to bring new ideas into a genre that frankly should never have died. Number 7, Stardew Valley is an open-ended tribute to Harvest Moon, with some incredibly nostalgic but much more detailed pixel art graphics than the original game. It also allows a degree of character character customization that you definitely didn't have back when you played Harvest Moon, and goes ahead and makes the game open-ended so you don't have to complete everything after a couple years. There's no rush, just enjoy the game. Now, it does go above and beyond Harvest Moon with a lot of the features in the game, and there's also a very active modding community that has created some very interesting and in many cases hilarious things to add to the game. Number 6, Civilization 6 is the next entry to the 4X video game series that builds on everything in Civ 5, but brings in more management ideas, including even some SimCity type city management. The game's tech tree is now known as the Active Research System and has been modified in a manner that encourages you to use it more. I could probably go into a very long list of things that have changed, but you know the difference between a Civilization game and its predecessor. That's basically what we're getting, and it's very exciting because it looks huge. Number 5, Tyranny is being billed as an RPG that deals with what happens after the bad guys win. It's built on a modified version of the technology they used to create Pillars of Eternity, but focuses on the aftermath. The developers have even kind of compared it to Judge Dredd in its own weird, twisted way. Now again, I'm really excited that this genre of games is coming back, and Pillars of Eternity is basically why that happened. I'm excited for Obsidian to be creating another original IP based in this genre. Number 4, Stellaris is a great looking 4X that for whatever reason reminds me of Mass Effect and predicates itself on the idea that you were peacefully coexisting with a bunch of different races and all of a sudden something went sour. I'm fine with that. If everything went well, we wouldn't really have any conflict to build a game on, would we? It's a game that's very flexible, at least within reason, and offers a fresh take on a genre that has seen a flood of new titles in recent years. Number 3, Total War Warhammer is the first game in the Total War series to use a fictional basis. Sega approached Creative Assembly, the creators of Total War, with the idea to make one of the games that they had licensed for the Warhammer series. Now, as you know, Total War is real-time tactics combined with turn-based strategy, and Total War manages all of that in possibly one of the tightest ways there is. I love Total War, I love the Warhammer universe, and I can't wait. Number 2, Offworld Trading Company. To put it in the simplest terms possible, this is an RTS that's based entirely around industrial sabotage. It takes place on Mars, and you're essentially trying to become the dominant corporation that manages the resources on the planet. I think Offworld Trading Company is one of the more unique ideas out there, and making people think of things from the perspective of there's still war going on, it's just not war, it's corporate war, might make people rethink the actual world maybe a little bit. I hope so anyway. Either way, the graphical style's great, the concept is awesome, and it's executed incredibly well. And number 1, XCOM 2 is obviously the premier turn-based tactics video game. The sequel takes place 20 years after the events of Enemy Unknown. The gameplay that everyone absolutely loves from XCOM Enemy Unknown has been refined in a way that is, of course, warranting of a sequel. There's also various expansions planned, and everybody who is hungry for more XCOM needs to pick this up and play the hell out of it. What's your favorite PC exclusive that's already out or is coming out this year? Let's meet in the comments and have a discussion about that. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and if you're not subscribed, now is a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every single day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. As always, we thank you so much for watching this video. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on GameRanks.